BJ O'Neill here with the Business Coaching Success Podcast. So glad you're here, where I share with you strategies, tools, and tips to be able to grow your business coaching practice to six figures and beyond as a Christian business coach. Let's jump in. Hey, we are back at it, talking about how to magnetize your coaching business, and specifically dynamic marketing insights for explosive business coaching growth. How's that for a long title? Specific ways I want you to think about when it comes to marketing your business coaching business. That's in simplicity, that's what we're talking about. And it like most things in life, it's really simple to overcomplicate this process. So I'm going to give you some things to think about. So maybe you're considering starting a business coaching business. Perhaps you have been mentoring some folks, you've been coaching for free, but you'd like to do this professionally. But you may be wondering, how do I market my name? How do I get myself out there? How do I, all these things, how do I, right? And today I'm going to give you some concrete things that you can do, but I also want to give you some things to think about as you build thought, strategy, and how you execute them. All right. Number one, don't make this big mistake that so many of us make. Just because it's a good idea, whatever the marketing strategy is, just because it's a good idea, it may be a terrible idea for you. Right? So if you follow the, shiny object syndrome, and if you're like me and a lot of people who ideate on things, you wake up with an idea and all of a sudden, man, you want to plow through a brick wall to go make that idea happen. Or you see somebody else doing that idea, you're like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I should do that. There's nothing wrong with thinking like that, but you need to first verify that idea fits within your strategy. So the few things I'm going to share with you, number one, you must build a marketing strategy for your business coaching business. Whatever it's going to look like, right? And it's going to look different than it is for this coach over here and that coach over there, for a bunch of different variables. But first, you got to figure out what works for you. So I'm going to give you some things to think about, but no, number one, just because it's a good idea, it may be a bad idea for you. Number two, you must have some type of marketing strategy. And if you are starting out, that marketing strategy must be flexible. Can't stress this enough. Here's why. You're going to learn things along the way. And if you're just so, if you're so baked into a way to do it, and that you're not willing to make some adaptations, you could be going down the wrong road for a long time before it's too late. You've spent a lot of energy, time, money, and you're just frustrated. Now, you don't want that strategy to be so flexible that you constantly are changing all the time. Now, I know it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm not. Flexibility means flexible. Flexibility does not mean change. And you got to see it through, give some things some time before you really know. So, again, make sure the ideas work, build a strategy. Here are a few things to consider. The first thing in your strategy, you got to stand out. In your marketplace, if you decide to do things locally, what are you going to do locally? What are you going to do nationally? Whatever lane you're going to choose, why would any business owner choose you over another option? And there's always a lot of options, right? Could be a different business coach. It could be a course that business owner goes through. Like, what are you going to do that's so compelling that makes you stand out? You need to answer this question. Here's some things to think about to answer this. Number one, your look and your approach. When I say your look, and I don't mean to be, it's all about looks per se. What I'm referring to is that, how do people perceive you? Like, we have one of our coaches that for years in the way he's done what he's done, he uses a very unique strategy all around a paintball jacket, and he's got I say paintball meaning a paint splatter, And it just something that worked years ago. It's just kind of worked. That's his strategy. It creates conversation, all these kinds of things. And his approach with it, even if you've never met him and you follow him on social media, you'll see this approach that he uses. His golf bag is a paint splatter, sunglasses a paint splatter. He's created this whole thing. Now look, I'm not suggesting that you go out and do things like that specifically. What I'm referring to is that how you present yourself absolutely can be a part of the process. People have, if you follow any of my video trainings, and you've seen my hair, for instance, I started graying very early. It's part of our family thing, and years ago, probably 10 years ago, started graying. So I took advantage of that and it made something of it that's a part of the way that, I look and whatnot. But your physical look can play a part of it. Does it have to? No. But you need to figure out what that looks like under standing out. And your approach. Your look and your approach. Next, under standing out is your message. What are you going to consistently say that at least creates an opportunity for conversation during the prospecting phase or during building relationships? And there's multi ways to do this. For simplicity and speed, you at least need to have a solid messaging strategy and summary that moves you to an elevator pitch. Now, you're not going to use that elevator pitch every day, all the time with those that you're building relationships with. But somewhere along that journey, when you're answering what you do, you need to be able to say exactly what you do. For instance, if I ran into you at the grocery store and you said, "What do you do?" I'm going to tell you that I am a business strategist. And specifically, I give seasoned Christian men a done-for-you, six-figure business coaching business, so they can live life on their terms. That's a messaging strategy, okay? You need to have one and an elevator pitch like that explains it. So right off the bat, as you're talking to people, they know exactly what you do. An elevator pitch that our coaches that are on our coaching team uses. You may have heard this before if you've been following me and listening to this podcast for a while. But we can show any business how to find $100,000 or more in 45 minutes or less without you spending an additional dime on marketing or advertising, guaranteed. That's our elevator pitch, okay? So your message matters. And then the last part of standing out is how you communicate. Here's what that means. You need to communicate often. You need to communicate with value. You need to communicate it's about them, not about you. Do not talk about reasons why they should hire a business coach, because that is an inverted way of talking about yourself. You need to make sure if you're connecting with a potential prospect, they need to get into your drip campaign sequence, and they need to have consistent communication from you, period. Now, if you decide to do videos or a podcast or whatever, certainly those things aid. They do take time. So you have to evaluate that and make sure it fits within your strategy that you can follow through with it and do it, but it's got to have value to it, period. So your look and your approach, your message, your elevator pitch, and how you communicate, make sure it's often and with value that they can take away and go, man, they just literally gave me something of significance. That's going to help you stand out. Number 2, a book. No doubt that one thing that John Maxwell's ever really shown me is that how valuable a book is. But here's the kind of book that I'm talking about. It needs to be a specific book, and we're talking about your strategy on marketing yourself as a business coach and strategist. You may have passion projects. You may have written a book. You may have a book in you. I'm not just talking about any book. You need to have a specific book that connects to your audience, if you will, your prospects, that builds that standout part and moves them closer to seeing you as a viable option of someone who can teach me, guide me, and show me and help me grow. So if it's not connected directly to how you can solve that business owner's problems, it's the wrong book. Your title, your approach, how you hand that book out, how you stand up in front of people and hold the book up, you need to have a complete strategy and process all centered around that book and how it can, again, focus on the prospect. This is not your biography. This isn't ethereal. This isn't productivity. This is all about business coaching principles. You need a book. The third, compelling resources. Now, when I say compelling resources, please hear the word compelling. Just because you have some resources, if they're not compelling, they're wasting your time. Now, what are compelling resources? Well, it could be coaching software. It could be an event that you do where you're going to teach and guide some folks. It could be, providing assessments, cheat sheets, how-tos. There's all kinds of different things. There's the one-sheeters. There's free 3-part courses. There's all kinds of things that you could do. You can Google these types of things, and you probably have seen other people do them. But here's my point. The resource must be compelling, shows how you stand out. Again, back to number one, you see how all this stuff is wrapped around together, and that the message in your compelling resources are connecting to moving the prospect to doing something with you to where you're going to make an invitation to work together. Okay? I'll give you an example. If, let's say that you again, as a coach, we'll use productivity. Productivity is absolutely a part of the process, but it doesn't exactly answer how that's going to truly help grow the business itself. Yes, you might help with activity time and time management and whatnot. My point is, you want to make sure that your resources are super compelling. That makes you stand out, draws people in, invites a conversation. It builds their know, like, and trust factor with you in a much deeper and different way, and then some. So, when you have a strategy built around standing out, when you have a strategy built around using a book, and when you have a strategy built around using compelling resources, I'm telling you right now, and it's an ironclad strategy, you're going to be marketing your coaching business and yourself in such a way that it's going to create significant separation towards others in the same marketplace. So whether you did all those things I just mentioned in a networking environment, whether you used actual paid lead generation strategies, whether you did some joint venture opportunities with anybody, when you're rinsing and repeating that strategy that we're talking about, it is super compelling, and super helpful. Okay? Just because it's a good idea, might be a terrible idea for you. Have a strategy wrapped around standing out. Use a book. By the way, you can do that all day long through Amazon. Doesn't cost you hardly anything. You don't have to have a 300-page book. You can literally have a 16-page guide. You could have a 10-page resource. It could be an ebook even, by the way. So if you're thinking, now, don't get me wrong, if you can make it physical, so much better because you can put that in someone's hands. But that might not be step one for you. Doing an ebook might be. And you can do that today, especially using even AI. You Google a lot of different assistants there. And then having compelling resources that you can give as added value. You might even use some of those compelling resources as an opt-in for someone to opt into something that you're going to do, and then go from there. Okay? Hope that makes sense to you. Here's what I don't want you to do. If you're getting started or you're thinking about getting started, you're just kind of going out there and just kind of doing activity without thinking through what we just talked about, it's just going to be hard for you. It just will. And I want you to avoid that. I want you to avoid that pain. All these different things, if you are interested in starting a business coaching business, if you saw this podcast through an email, you can reply back. And you got questions about how we address these in our Done For You system, glad to entertain a conversation with you. You can reply back to that email, or you can email me directly, bj at bjoneal.com. That's bj at bjoneal.com. We can have a conversation, and perhaps I can give you some insights and some thoughts on how these principles can work for you in your journey on building a profitable six-figure business coaching business. All right, until next time, take care.